It's the Dev Friday Show with Mark and Tim.
So, according to Twitter, today is, what is this, the Friday of Linux on the desktop? I don't know. Are we supposed to be talking about Linux today, Mark?
It could be. You know, the purpose of this show is for me to complain about things I was either working on or not working on during the week. So
is that what the purpose of the show is?
I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about. But first, before we get there, I was thinking about this. I think I need to make an apology to our many, many listeners.
All of them.
Who have watched or listened to our 10 episodes, or this is our 12th. This is our 13th. This is our 13th episodes. Wow.
It's also a Friday, so I mean, I guess that means this is the lucky episode.
And we'll have to talk about that too. Our release schedule. That's another issue that we're going to talk about today.
Oh, is that we're gonna talk about that? Okay.
But no, because you always make fun of me how I either watch or listen back to our podcast. I usually only like to listen to podcasts that I'm in or that I'm doing. The reason for that is I'm trying to improve, and I realized as I was go back and listen to some of my previous episodes.
But the inference there is I don't listen to this ever, so I am not trying to get any better than I am right now.
So I talk way too fast. And this is an issue actually I had earlier on when I was started teaching. I did have an issue of teaching and lecturing too fast. But what I realized was that I was able to fix it by after I do the same content over and over again, I'm able to focus on that. I can slow my speech down and be able to be a little more clear. But I realized with you, I get too excited.
Just so excited.
And we don't do any prep for this show. So everything I'm saying is pretty much off the cuff, and I may talk about too fast because I get too excited about it. So
get very excited. But that's part of the dynamic. That is the energy of this show.
But I mean, like I said, I apologize. I'm going to try to make it better. I watch every episode back in HD on YouTube on my nice big screen TV, and I'm doing that to improve my presentation skills.
All right.
Just had to clear that up.
Just apologizing to all of the many subscribers because wait a second, I feel like we now have subscribe buttons someplace. I don't know what that means, but I'm getting in some early information. Did you know we are the most subscribed? Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's
subscribed.
It's the least subscribed to show of all time. I'm sorry. Yes, the least one.
Well, we do have some new fancy subscribe buttons on our website.
Yeah.
Early in the week, I got motivated. I pushed. I talked about this in the end of the last show. I was gonna want to do one more kind of theme update before working on the custom audio player. I wanted to just do a different layout and make sure it's responsive and all that goodness. But I added some subscribe buttons for Spotify. We're also on Spotify now, so I added this show to Spotify.
Don't even know what that is.
Oh. Okay. Well, we talk about that.
Mark's like, I don't even know how to respond to that.
And are you being serious? You don't know what Spotify
I know what Spotify is.
Okay, I was like, come on, that's crazy.
I don't use it. So,
iTunes, direct feed, also our page on the podcastindex.org, a link to our RSS feed if you just want to consume our RSS feed directly. And the player of your choice. So we have some nice subscribe buttons on our website, which is a pretty major update to the website. So if you want to check that out, go to devfridayshow.com and take a look at the new UI, the new user interface.
And the new subscribe buttons. So
yeah.
All right, well, that's a show. We got 4 minutes in. I think I'll run out of content then. So
oh.
Is that all we've got?
I think so. Well, maybe, unless we want to talk about some the rat hole that I went down this week
with Linux. I forgot last week. Yeah. I was going to critique your Dockerfile.
Oh yeah, that was something that
because I confirmed I have the same issue that you have.
Okay.
With running the Dockerfile, Docker Compose up, it doesn't do the hot reload. Okay. But my little shell script works just fine running it without
which I may just have to. It's annoying that I cannot get the Docker Compose working in that way. I'm not sure what's the disconnect there.
I think there's a couple things we could
talk about that.
We could talk about.
I know you are much more of a Docker expert than I am, so that would be good to have a little critique of my.
I don't want to set
config
the
file
bar too high. I mean, I'm pretty...
Well, you've been using it on your job a lot more than I have. This is kind of
say. I don't know that it takes much to get better than because you've not even used it, right? You're just.
Yeah,
You've
I've
not
just
really
played
used
with
Docker.
it.
You're just playing with it. Yeah.
I never,
So
I never used it in I never used it in a real project where I'm working with you on and kind of just wanting to kind of have a good workflow with it. And like we've been talking about Docker, I actually believe in the purpose of Docker. Like I like the idea of having like almost like a virtualized
mhm.
a system that you're per project that you can run on, you can configure. And I think that is really, really valuable because like I would do in the past, if I wanted to have a similar setup, I'd have to run a virtual machine. But with Docker, you don't really have to do that. It kind of just can do all your packages. But then getting to Linux.
Wait. First, we got to talk about your Dockerfile.
Oh, you don't want to go past that because
No,
you're
not
afraid
yet,
we're just
not
gonna
yet.
like.
We just need to. We just need
all
to.
right.
But and I don't know if this is going to fix the problems with your Docker Compose.
All right.
It may not. But a couple of things that I see in your Docker, the way it. This is weird. I just got to. I'm distracting myself because I have Twitter up to be able to retweet the thing, and I see the video of us, which has us talking, but there's silence because it's not live anymore. It's just a little bit behind, and it's
Yep.
confusing. It's confusing me to no end. So we're going to turn that off. Now, I don't even remember where I was. We'll have to
I don't
make a
know
little
either.
chapter mark right here for Tim getting back to the Dockerfile. So I'm looking at the Dockerfile. Now, you're doing a couple things that I find odd. One, you're building a Docker container, or Docker image for the application itself.
And
Now,
wait, first of all, before you go into this, are you talking about the Docker? Let's see. There's two files here: the Docker Compose file, and then the
well, I'm talking
Docker-
about the
the-
fact
the-
that the Docker Compose file uses the Dev Friday container, which you build using the Dockerfile.
Okay, yeah. So we have the Docker file and the Docker Compose YAML file.
Right.
So
And for
which one
people
are you
who are
referencing?
not too familiar with Docker, Docker Compose is a way to orchestrate different containers and images and run them together to do things, to accomplish something. A Docker file describes how an image is built. Now, you can build an image in a number of ways. One of it, which is you could just take an existing image, like say Alpine Linux, boot it up, go into it, get a shell in that image, do stuff. You can install npm, do something else, and then outside of that container that you're running in your host container, your host operating system, you can say, "Oh, look at that running container. I want you to save it." Essentially, here's a name, and I want you to take its current state, and I want you to save it. That is one way to make a different image and to create kind of your own version of an image. The other way, which is this more supported way and more normal way of doing it, is to take a Docker file which describes all the steps needed to build your image. So you have a Docker file here that takes the Node 16 Alpine image, basically.
Yep.
It does some things. It runs some commands. It copies in the whole application, and that's where it starts to get weird.
Yeah, and I was wondering about that too. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm referencing a lot of examples I found online.
Yeah,
of
don't do that.
People who created Docker projects for React
Yeah, don't do
applications.
that. Don't do that at all. Because what's happening here is you're at the point in time that you're building this, you're copying over your source files, which
Yeah.
is why your hot reload doesn't work. I said I don't know if I'd fix it, but
So
yes,
it moves
I
because
do.
it sets the work
it's
directory as
l-
the app folder, and then those files basically never get changed.
never get
or if they're-
changed.
if the application's recompiled.
Right. So
Yeah.
what you're doing is to get that hot reload or whatever you're doing to actually see the changes is you're going to have to build the Docker container again or the image again, launch it as a container, and then you'll see the new data. So your lines there where you're copying your app, you don't want to do ever. In
Okay.
fact, if you look at it, you can see, well, for the most part, you're installing Gatsby, you're running Yarn, and you're running the build for Gatsby. All those things too are things that you don't need. Those are, what do I want to say? They're temporal things, right? They're things that you're going to do time and time again.
Now the Gatsby build I can understand, but the Yarn install.
Well,
you
every
need to
time you change
install all the dependencies, right? When you
Right,
when you
but
build the
every
image.
time you do that, right, you're going to have to do that again. Every time you change your dependencies, you're going to have to do that again. And installing dependencies for our listeners and those who aren't viewing the live stream, I used air quotes. Installing dependencies in the context of npm or yarn. Now, I do see npm, you're installing it globally. Let's not do that.
Well, only with the Gatsby CLI.
Right,
and
so you could argue, okay, so we're going to have Gatsby CLI installed globally, and that is going to be our image. We're going to have a node image that has Gatsby CLI installed globally, and that is basically the thing that we build from. because everything else, when you do yarn install or Gatsby build, you are changing files that are kind of local to your project.
Yeah.
They live in there. So you don't have to worry about doing it in the container. What you have to do is make sure that the container can do that, right? So that might be why you want Gatsby installed globally. Arguably, you could also just have Gatsby installed locally and reference it there. And locally meaning in relation to your project directory. Then in your Docker Compose file, I see you're mounting your source to app source after you copy things in. So mounting the source to app source should work. I think the issue here, though,
it's never getting updated.
It's just never, however it's running, but, I'm not as familiar with the command that you have for starting it.
Yeah,
but we shouldn't be copying in the whole application. That should be something that's mounted on run. Yeah,
I totally agree with that, because the whole app folder was kind of, I didn't really understand that from the examples. And even though people just explain, it's going to copy the project in, and that's where it's going to be running from. Didn't really have a good explanation for it. And even when I was trying to look at the documentation, I didn't really see that. I don't know. It was very, very confusing. And that's the reason why it's having an issue with the updates. That totally makes sense. Now when I do the volumes for the server in the YAML file, the Docker Compose YAML file, I'm just specifying the source directory then.
Right. You're saying that you're going to mount, I think,
the source directory
source of your host to app/source.
But I shouldn't be doing the app source, right?
Well, no, probably not, because you think, I think you want to run it from /app. I'm also not even sure about mounting it that way. It's been a while since I tinkered with Docker Compose files. I thought you'd have to put in I don't remember that they handled relative directories fine, and maybe they do. Probably do. I would have to look at a reference compose file to refresh my memory on that. But yeah, and I don't know, do you want to just mount the source in? I feel like you want to mount more than the source in, because you also want your local node modules, your local public, things like that.
Correct. Yeah.
Like, I think you actually want to do like / map it to someplace. Now, if you saw examples where people were copying in their app in the Docker file when they're building the image, the usefulness of that is if you're building like an app that you want someone to grab the container and run the app, not a development situation where you want but if you're like building a React style app that's supposed to like run in the browser as your UI, and you just want to launch it, like it's the
way that I'm doing it, that totally makes sense, where I'm basically setting up a Docker setup for production.
Yes. That's like if you were building an image for production,
which I don't want to do.
Right. But you would maybe copy the entire app in, build it, make sure it's ready to run, and then say, as soon as this launches, we're sitting there ready to go. Yeah. And then when you change versions, you just release a different image, which it'd be the easy way to roll from, say, like your latest image back a version if you realize something was wrong, because the data is actually in the container. You're not mounting it in the container; it is in the container. But yes, that would be for production. For local dev, which is what you're doing, you could use, and that's where you could like use the production container if that had the application, and then just mount your local copy over top of it. But
I'm building, when I'm for production, we're just building the application, then pushing it to Firebase with a GitHub action. So it's like, I don't, you have no intention of doing that. So
do that. Yeah. And for me, I'm looking here. What am I doing? I'm just mounting it in a node container and calling yarn start.
Okay. So so send me your script or your command that you did for that, and I'll have to play with that.
Yeah. And everybody else is like, this was cool. We got to see two people just talk about what they're working on.
There's nothing more interesting listening to a podcast of two developers talking about a configuration file that the listener cannot see. Yes,
that's exactly right.
More enjoyable than
that we know everybody wants. So that's why we're creating it. So, what else? Today is why are we talking about Linux today?
It started
because apparently there's money. There's money riding on this, because if you're a betting man, and for those who don't understand that tweet, our first hackathon We have stories about that. So
That'll be for a later topic.
will it though?
Maybe. Yeah, I think we should. It's always fun talking about the past. So this week I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole with YouTube. We talk about how I like to. YouTube's still one of my guilty pleasures of social networks that I kind of fall into, and because I've subscribed to the YouTube Premium, so I don't have to watch commercials. So when I have some free time, watch YouTube. Also on the TV, the YouTube app works really nice too, so I could just kind of watch my subscriptions and see and watch there. But
Watch
the
yourself in
YouTube
HD.
That's true. That's what I do because you see our video pop up in my stream. I cannot help but click on it and be able to watch it. So yeah,
these faces in your stream, yes, you're like, click on that.
And so in the YouTube AI for their algorithm for understanding what I would like to see is pretty good in a sense, based on my subscription, based on my watch habit. So
I think Mark wants to see Mark. Let's show him more Mark.
Not that part, but the YouTube suggested for me to watch a video about a Vim developer who said, I think the topic was I stopped caring and I started to I learned Emacs by loving Vim or something like that. So I was like, okay, that's kind of an interesting thing. So this is a Vim developer who switched to Emacs, and I was kind of curious about that because I've made the joke with you before about Vim versus Emacs and what do you prefer, and you prefer IDEs, and you haven't touched them at all.
I can use a mouse with. Thank you.
So, but I'm a big Vim user. I've talked about that before. So I was just curious about it. Okay, let's see what this whole Emacs thing is about. Because I really have I've opened it up, downloaded it a little bit, but I've never really used it at all. And then he showed me his process, how he uses basically a Vim emulation mode, which you can have
in Emacs.
Yeah, in Emacs, which is called EVA mode. But you can basically do that in almost any IDE. Like we talk about Android Studio, Visual Studio Code. They all have either Vim emulation modes or Vim plugins that provides the functionality. Not a huge fan of this. It does feel like a little bit slow because the reason why I like Vim and using the key bindings and using the visual mode, the insert mode, and be able to kind of move around a file just using key maps or a certain set of features that Vim has, then it just feels really fast to me. So I was kind of curious about this. Okay, let's just see what this is like. So I downloaded Emacs. I kind of also read a couple tutorials and kind of workflows. I did get it working with the Vim emulation mode. The configuration is actually pretty nice because you can build like your plugins, your libraries that you add to Emacs, and also learning what Emacs is too. Because I just thought of Emacs was just an alternative text editor to that that was kind of built. And it's
more like a string manipulation thing, right? Like it's
it's basically like an operating system.
Right. Okay.
Because it's basically like a platform that you're going to be adding modules or libraries to kind of build it out however way you want it to be built out. So, you could build it, you could use it straight as a text editor if you wanted to, but the libraries that you add to it can add functions. Like if you want to, you could add like email clients. You could add like a Twitter client to it. You could add, which actually I really want to try to do the email thing with Gmail. I think that looks kind of pretty cool. Also, have you ever used a Tmux before?
Yeah.
Which a Tmux, when I was back on the Mac, working in the primarily from the terminal, back in my Ruby and Python days, I really, really fell in love with because I love the fact I could have basically a modular terminal window that I could create new windows inside of and be able to run basically kind of mini terminal sessions within the one session. I thought that was really, really cool.
And you can do that in Emacs, right?
And that's what the way that you configure Emacs and some of the functions you could do with it, you could basically have the exact same. I could bring up a terminal inside of Emacs. And I'm on the PC now, so I could bring in just a regular command shell or PowerShell session, and it works great. And then I could use my same Vim kind of features that I like in the terminal window. So if I want to do like a read a log or just do like a directory listing or something like that, I want to go search to a specific line or select a set of columns or lines, could do that with Vim. So it was pretty cool. So, but then I discovered with Emacs, there's also these different frameworks, or I think of it basically like big configurations that developers have been made. First one I tried was Spacemacs. Spacemacs was pretty cool. I did have issues getting it installed, and if you just Google these like Spacemacs, all your
tabs to spaces.
No, well, it has a feature. Yes, you could. Well, yes, but you want to configure that. So yeah, that can easily be done. But it's basically just a large set of kind of libraries, configurations that are kind of preset that developers have kind of put together in basically that you can it automatically configures Emacs in a specific way. So it basically kind of builds a new version of Emacs that's configured for for a very specific set of features. So Spacemacs is pretty cool, but I did get it. I had trouble getting it installed on Windows, which it gave me some errors. Some libraries didn't compile and to get installed correctly. So that got a little bit annoying and a little bit distracting. But then I found Doom Emacs. And you have to search for Doom Emacs, Tim, because we had talked about Doom before. The Doom Emacs, which basically is built around
we have or we haven't. Have we talked about Doom before?
Yeah, a little bit before, because you have some experience, playing Doom. Like we talked about video games, all the games you previously played. I think you mentioned Doom.
Not Doom, no.
Maybe that was a Half-Life.
Half-Life, yeah.
Doom. Okay.
No.
So if you
is this Doom in Emacs? Is this what I'm
so
seeing
it's once again it's another kind of framework that builds out a version of Emacs, and it's built around Vim. So it starts with Vim on Evo mode by default. It's really, really fast. I was able to get it installed on Windows, no problem. And then it was great. So I thought, yeah, so that's what I'm kind of learning, kind of using. So I'm still going back and forth between my the GVim or the Vim GUI application, and going back and forth between those Doom Emacs and kind of to learn it, because it is still a learning process and knowing how to use like the correct the key mappings that both Doom Emacs gives you and also is in Emacs by default. And so it's still a learning process, but that's been something I've been spending more than a couple hours on throughout the week, kind of learning these different editors. But it is kind of cool learning Emacs through Vim. And I think that's kind of a good, because I always, like, growing up as a developer, you always hear like the people argue about Emacs versus Vim, and the best world, you just had to have both of them together. So
I feel like someone's watching this and going, Mom, I found a time portal. There's people on a video talking about Vim and Emacs.
They're the editors of the future. They're both the editors of the past and the future, Tim.
Okay.
But then that led me, which I was trying to remember. It was kind of a long and fast week at the same time.
You've run into Nano now.
Nano. Nano is that the Vim distro that you think?
No, Nano's the simple text editor for those of us who can't figure out how to.
And then I was getting into all this Emacs and Vim. I was playing with this. I was like, man, and I kept reading about, Emacs is so much faster on Linux. And I was like,
is it faster on Linux?
Well, now I know, yes, because I got Linux installed on something. Then yes, it is. So because it is like using Doom Emacs on a PC. It works. It feels like an IDE, so it feels a little slow. And that's the reason why I don't like use IDEs, because it's just moving around, sluggish, and when windows open up and sessions open up, or buffers, with the way they call it, when they kind of switch back and forth open, there's a little bit of delay there when it's reading the file system or searching the file system. It's a little bit slower. So, but it's functional, and I still like it on Windows. But I was just curious, and I was kind of saying, okay, should I? I'm a little crazy. I know the semester is about to start. Should I just try to do like a dual boot, like I used to do in the past, of my PC, and just to try out Linux? I was thinking, okay, that's kind of crazy, because like I'm just starting the semester. My PC is set up perfectly.
Of course you should.
My PC is set up perfectly. I don't have to stress about that. Everything's installed. And also I've been working through, playing with different applications to replace my Adobe applications, like I talked about in the last show, about trying to teach mostly with open source in this semester. So I was like, yeah, I need to have Linux. I want to try it out. But I was like, it's too risky. But you know what I had mentioned to you before? I have one of my favorite laptops of all time, the Surface Go.
Surface Go, yeah.
Surface Go laptop. And
now it's gone.
And I remember reading or hearing that Linux Mint worked really, really well in it. There was a couple of issues I was a little concerned about, which I kind of held me back from doing this. Was the people said that the camera, because of the proprietary way, the drivers for that never worked. So I was a little bit concerned about that, because I actually like having a camera on the Lex. I've used that before with like Skype sessions or Zoom Zoom sessions. So I didn't want to lose the camera or feel like I had to plug in a USB camera to the Surface Go. Would be kind of weird. So that was kind of concerning. Also, they said that the Wi-Fi took a little bit more configuration. So once you installed Linux Mint, you'd have to go and do a configuration change to the kernel. I'm not sure if you have to add like a driver patch or something like that. And every time the kernel gets updated, you also have to do that same patch over and over again. I was thinking, okay, if once I figured out, I could probably do that. So I was like, let's just roll the dice and let's do it. So I downloaded Linux, it's only like a 2 gigabyte.
You're not dual booting this.
No, because I was like,
replacing it?
no, because I was like, okay, because the one thing that Surface Go, I remember I mentioned too, that I love the laptop. I wish it was a little bit faster. Like it's just a tad. Like it's just, there's certain things about that could be a little
Right,
bit
because
better.
the Go is a low cost,
Yeah,
less
it's only-
performant Surface.
It's an i5 with eight
Right.
gigs of memory, which I think is pretty good and runs mostly everything that I need to run. And so I'm not looking to do Blender renders on it or anything like that, or do anything serious. But just for doing code editing, web browser stuff, just it's totally fine. And I liked it, but I wish it could be a little faster. I heard also with Linux Mint that it actually
Did you
speeds up.
hear that
I did.
Surfaces
So
are faster on Linux?
I'm believing what everybody says on the internet, Tim. I believe.
Yeah. Everything's faster on Linux.
So I got it installed. It is really nice. It's slick. It had a nice feel to it. The GUI was fast. And what I was surprised by too was the fact that the camera worked, the Wi-Fi worked out of the box. So the newest version of Linux Mint works almost perfect on the Surface Go. So I highly recommend it. But I did have one issue, and now I'm thinking, I was having this a couple of days ago. What was the one issue that I had with it? There was one thing that that was like, it was something with the getting actually something with Emacs. I was having an issue with based on building Emacs. It was a weird kind of software. I was installing software and doing my doing the apt install and installing the package. I had an issue with one of the kind of libraries or software that I was using. It kind of annoyed me. And I was like, okay, why is this happening? It basically is because of the version or the kernel version that Linux Mint is using. So I just ran into a roadblock with something. So I was kind of frustrated. So I was like, okay, I'm curious. Well, what other Linux distribution may be similar to Linux Mint that would work well on the Surface Go, but would not? I could just try to see if I don't have this.
Mint's just a fork of Ubuntu, right?
Yes. So what do you think? This is what I was going to ask you. What do you think is the other Linux distro that
Pop!
I tried?
OS. Do Pop! OS.
You did.
Come on.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes, I did. I did.
love Pop! OS.
So it was interesting to compare and contrast them. So yeah, I searched, and that was one of the distros that came up as a recommendation for installing. So the Pop! OS is from System 76, which you are a fan of, right? Do you still use their machines?
I actually don't have one of their machines sitting here right now, but both of my old laptops were System 76. Once I moved to a dedicated desktop for my development, I didn't buy one of their machines only because it's just much more affordable to build that out of the components that you want yourself.
Yeah, because looking at their website and their machines, it seems like they're trying to be the Apple of Linux.
I could see that.
Putting in some good effort with designing of their hardware, doing custom cases, trying to make it look slick in their own kind of style, their own way. And what was also interesting, comparing the OS, Pop! OS, which is maintained by System 76, right? They're the primary maintainers, developers.
Yes.
Yep. That's the OS that they use for their computers. Excuse me. And so it's interesting. Getting that installed was interesting because Linux Mint, if you're coming from Windows, it's such an easy transition. It's smooth,
Where they put
it's sharp,
everything...
it's fast. Even with the taskbar, the search features, the way it lists the application in the start menu, it's very similar. So if you were suggesting somebody to go from Windows to Linux, I think Linux Mint is the best way to go.
They'd be very familiar with the UI elements. Then.
Yeah, it's very similar. I think that's the way it's designed. Like it's nice to be an easy, light transition for somebody who's interested or just wants to try out Linux because they've been hearing about or curious about what it's about. But doing Pop! OS, it feels like it's actually a nice transition for Mac users because the design of the GUI is very similar to OS 10 or the OS 10 style.
And that's coming from the GNOME, I think. A lot of the GNOME elements that they use.
Yep. So it's interesting. So yeah, I have Pop! OS running on my Surface Go now. Everything installed perfectly. It's super fast, and I'm super happy. So I'm not getting too crazy with messing up my Windows desktop, and until maybe the summer, maybe I'll play with that and do a dual boot because I think eventually I want to probably do something like that. But I think now I can play with Linux because I think what we talked about, how I like to use the Surface Go for doing light code editing. And since code editing, now that I'm moving to the Emacs world with this Vim emulation, and it does run faster on Linux, I have a nice code editing mini laptop for me to use now. So
You know what else runs faster on Linux? JetBrains IDEs.
That's probably, why do you think that is? Why do you think it's slower? Well, I don't know. I can't speak to that now because I haven't used them in a while, except for Android Studio, which has gotten better. But why do you think that is? Why do you think it's?
I don't know. I don't know if they actually run faster on Linux. But what I will no. But so here's where it comes. If you're using like a Docker type environment to do your development on, which is what I use day to day, it's a lot faster on Linux because of the way you don't have to have some virtualization layer between the main OS and Docker, and there's not virtualization with the I/O for disk reads or anything like that. My understanding is developers coming from either Windows or Linux on the team that I work with, the speed difference in developing natively on Linux because of Docker, not I joke, but it's because of Docker is ridiculously different. In other words, it's you wouldn't be able to run the full test suite in any reasonable amount of time on Windows or on Mac, but on Linux you can.
Which that's what I'm going to try now. Now that we had the Docker discussion in the beginning, I want to try out because now since I have my Surface go with the Linux now, I'm going to try to just run the project or run the Docker project on my laptop, see if it's easier to do that.
See how it works. Yeah.
But now I remember the reason why the conflict, the issue.
Okay.
I think it was one late night this week that I spent way too much time, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to figure it out, just fixing it within Linux Mint. It was the most annoying feature not to have on a laptop is the battery status.
Really? Oh, because it didn't know what the batteries.
It wouldn't show me the icon in the taskbar. Or actually, no, it did, but it showed me the icon has like two features. It shows you you can control the display brightness and also shows the battery. The battery status was not working. Even when you go to the settings and look for under the power settings, it comes up as like unknown, or it doesn't know. It just doesn't recognize it at all. And so that's what I was trying to do. I downloaded some kernel patches. I tried to get it working. I couldn't get it working, but that was the most frustrating because if you have a laptop, one of the most important things you want to know is how much battery you have.
Power. Yeah.
Because I was like using it. I was using it without it being plugged in. I was like, just curious about it. I have no idea how long this is going to last. Like I could be working on something and it could just, I don't even know it because I think that the Mint or the Linux operating system didn't even know at all what the battery was. So it couldn't even do any reporting back to me. I don't even know if it warned me if it got down to like 5% or 2%, where, sometimes when you see the pop-up message saying you need to plug this in, I don't even know if it would do that. So that was very, very concerning. But once again, installed Pop OS, that worked out of the box. So
really, well, that's great. That's great because I think System 76 is doing great work, not just in their hardware, but also in Pop OS. Yeah. I will say, like, however, it felt good to you. Well, no, wait. Have you been using a Mac lately?
I do not. Well, no, I pretty much switched over from Mac to PC about full time. Usually, I would have like one Mac, one PC. Like I have a MacBook for work. My wife has my MacBook now, so that's what she uses full time. I bought, I think it was a couple of years ago. I just said, okay, I'm just going to go buy a really high end PC and just use that, primarily because it's just based on the applications running, and having large displays. That's kind of the route that I went, and so I kind of moved away from the Mac. But I've been around the Mac. Linux too is interesting. How I've been away from Linux for a long time too. Except for running some cloud servers, like configuring some cloud servers, like a Google Cloud, and doing a little bit of a term, kind of remoting into different instances that I've run before, but actually using it as like a GUI or desktop interface. I haven't used Linux in a long time. Back in college, remember Slackware?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Slackware was one of the first distros I started with, and because I think I got like a book that had like a CD-ROM with it, and I was able to
back in the day when you could download our source.
Well, the source. Well, before I got to college, it had good high-speed internet. When we talked about
no, I know, but that's what I'm saying. Like we used to, like you didn't used to download your Linux distro. You'd get it from
Yeah,
somebody.
so before going into college, I started playing with Linux, and then when I got to college, had the high-speed internet. Oh, well, I could download all this stuff. I don't have to worry about getting these CDs anymore. So I was able to, go to get a Linux magazine, like a Linux format magazine, get like the CD that comes with that, or get a book that would give you a CD and kind of give you instructions. So playing with I played with like Red Hat, Slacker, or Slackware?
Slackware, I think it is. Yeah.
What was the other one that was really back in the like 90s that was really
Arch?
popular? I never played with Arch.
Okay.
I did Debian just straight before Ubuntu.
Right. Right.
And there was one more. Oh, Fedora, which is another
kind of
Fedora
is Red Hat.
It's more kind of friendly version of Red Hat.
Yeah.
So Fedora I used a lot. So, but then because I remember going from Fedora, and then when Ubuntu came out, I was like, oh, we'll switch to that and just kind of use. So I always had at least one PC, that was like a lower end PC. You could just kind of have Linux on, play with it here and then, or do a dual boot, which I did a lot in the past to be able to boot between Windows and Linux, which I may do in the future again. So, but now coming back to it, I think it's kind of an interesting experience. But and then since I'm not using the Mac anymore, because the reason, one of the reasons why it was great using the Mac is because it's built upon like a BSD Unix style operating system. So you could have basically all the features that you like about running, server side applications they could do in Linux, you could do Mac OS. So it was a nice kind of easy transition, especially as a web developer. So now I could have that again. So.
Yeah, some of the UI elements that Pop! OS introduced that I think you're seeing is similar to coming from a Mac standpoint, like the taskbar or whatever you want to call it, the launch bar at the bottom, centered and all that. I mean, that's
the dock.
That's the dock. The dock is recent.
Okay,
and it's honestly something I haven't had the time to figure out how to do. I want to get rid of it. I've never used it. I don't like it.
Yeah, what I use, I just automatically hide it, and then if I need it, I could just
Yeah, I don't even want I have mine hidden, but I don't ever want to see it, because if I want to see what's running, what it used to be is if you'd hit the super key, whatever that is, the Windows key, whatever it is on your keyboard, right? It would show that list of kind of running applications off to the side. And when you hit the super key, it'd zoom out, and you'd see all the windows that you'd have, and you could pick the one you want. It used to be too that when you hit the super key, it also let you start typing in an application you want to run. But that's changed now. Now you have to do like super A to bring up the application list and start. So I don't like some of the changes that have been made, and I think most of them are coming now. I think Pop is integrating them, but I think a lot of them is coming from GNOME and the changes that GNOME are making. And my understanding is that Pop is writing their own window manager in Rust. That will then replace their use of GNOME. So I'll be very interested in seeing how that comes.
Are you talking about the next version that they're working on? Is written in Rust, or is it currently written in Rust that they compile and
No, I think it's a window manager that they're going to replace their use of GNOME with, if I understand it correctly.
That'd be interesting.
I don't know when they're thinking of being able to release that. I'm just really interested in it because Pop, generally speaking, is a distro that's kind of focused on people that are using Linux to create things, whether it be code, whether it be design, whatever it is. So I feel like they tend to err toward this. Let you customize it to however you want and give you some of these tooling to make that easy. So I'm very interested to see what their perspective on a window manager is.
I think out of the box right now, I was really impressed with, especially comparing Linux Mint to Pop. Pop's tile manager that they use in their windowing system to have it automatically either go kind of full screen automatically, or if you launch multiple applications, it'll start to automatically tile them. That's really, really nice. And you can still control it with your super keys and your combinations. So the automatic tiling of basically that's usually the way I work with my Windows PC. I usually either have two big monitors and usually
dragging to the side and dragging to the other side.
Or just use the window key with the arrow keys. I can just snap the windows from one, so I don't have to really drag them. But what I do is I basically have four Windows applications kind of running all the time, and I can switch between within that tile what the application is. But I like the automatic nature of, especially on a small laptop where you don't have much screen space, where the application automatically opens up full screen. Then I open up another application, it splits it, basically 2-column view, and then I could just minimize or maximize, and I think it actually works really, really well.
Good. Yeah, I love Pop! OS. I'm really excited to see what they're going to bring next.
So what else
Well,
were
that's
you?
a good show. That's a good show, right?
Well, I was going to ask you what you've been working on this week because I think you've been pretty busy, right, with work.
I mean, yeah, well, kind of with work. I mean, I should be more busy with work because we got a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah.
But no, a lot of my week has been spent getting prepped for a winter camp next week that I'm cooking for.
Okay.
So figuring out how to make food to feed 80 or so hungry teenagers.
Ooh, that sounds like a good old time.
Yeah. So we haven't done this for a lot. I forget when the last time we did this.
Where are you doing it at?
Down in where is it? It's a little north of Philly. I like Pottstown, a little lower than Pottstown area. So there might be snow because we'll be getting there Sunday and it'll be Monday and Tuesday. So there may be snow because there's a snowstorm coming through the area Sunday night. We'll see about that.
Is it like a conference campground style?
Yeah. It's at the church that I grew up at does a winter camp down there.
Okay.
My parents used to cook for it back in the day, and then me and my wife cooked for it until my grandparents came and moved in with us, and then that's the year that we stopped doing it. And both the girls are old enough that my oldest has been at camp a couple years now, and they needed a new cook, so we're gonna go do it for 2 days.
It's a good tradition that you've been carrying. Good family tradition that you've been carrying on.
Something like that. So should be good food hopefully. But yeah, that's a lot of the.
Is it going to be easy being away from work, or are you still going to work a little bit, or what's your kind of workflow?
I'll take the Surface.
When you're away.
The Surface with me, and that hopefully I'll be able to connect back to my desktop to do some code review and not block anybody. But no, I don't plan on doing a whole lot of active. I'm marked as out those 2 days anyway.
So they're not going to be stressed, not going to be pressuring you to kind of do any updates or anything like that, or
no. But I'll be there. So if any code needs me to take a look at it or people have questions, hopefully I can get back to them, within a timely manner so they don't get blocked by anything. But no, it should be a fun day. Cooking at that scale is always interesting. It's a lot different to. I just smoked 33 pounds of pork. And that's a different process than smoking 2 shoulders, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of meat there.
And I think like this is we'll make it kind of tech related. The amount of computers involved in smoking 33 pounds of pork was interesting because I have the stoker system on the smoker that maintains the temperature with probes inside the pit. So
what are you using for fuel?
On that lump charcoal.
Okay.
So
because when I was doing some smoking before,
I
was using just wood, which for flavor and that's good.
That works, yeah.
But it was like I had to I had to replace that. It would burn it out so fast.
Now, were you using like pellets in a smoker?
No, that's what I talked to my neighbor who he was doing some smoke, and I was walking the dog and I saw he was doing some smoke, and I was just asking about a smoker and then what he used. Yeah, he uses the pellets, the wood pellets, and it's much more consistent, longer burning. So if I ever go back and get another smoke and want to do some more of that, I'm probably going to go that route because that was the most annoying thing. We had the what was it? I forgot the name. The big kind of log style smoke with the container.
I know what you're saying. It's like the char. It has the heat box off to the side.
Yes,
an offset.
I forgot the brand box because it's been a while. But the one, and it worked really well. But the one annoying thing about it was because even if you're using the heat sensor inside of it, and we talk about technology, the remote sensors are really, really cool that you can both by probing the meat, but also probing just the temperature, setting up inside of it. So you can kind of have a remote device or an app on your phone that you could be able to manage that with. But just managing the temperature with wood was so annoying. So I don't know if I'll do that again.
That's what I always would. That was the hardest part for me. Now, for some reason, and it's just me, I don't like the idea of wood pellets. I understand the concept, and you're pushing, you're consistently pushing a wood pellet in. The BTU, the energy is going to be expended as it burns, so you can maintain a temperature by how much wood pellet you put into the fire. I get it. I just don't like the idea of wood pellets.
It's because of how they're manufactured. You think there's
it feels, and I know it's completely I guess you call it aesthetic, right? It's just a feeling about that. I want either real charcoal or real wood. But then yes, the problem is I use one of those kind of egg, or I think they're called Kamado style grills that you can smoke on. So I could set the flues right to pretty much get a consistent temperature, but I'd always have to be checking. So the stoker system I have, it bolts on. I say it bolts on. I had to kind of make a thing where I could put the fan in front of the intake flue on the bottom of my smoker. So there's a blower fan there, and it monitors the temperature of the pit. And if it's dropping too low, it blows air in. And if it's getting too high, it actually closes the vent
automatically.
There's a little servo that closes the vent on the blower. So from that standpoint, I have the control of like a pellet smoker. It's a computer maintaining a consistent temperature, and it's really good about maintaining that temperature. But I am using fuel that I feel better about, right? And I think I could pull off the same thing with a regular wood fire. It would probably not as well as charcoal, because charcoal tends to, be easier to control, and not flare up as much, because it's charcoal, it's not wood. But yeah, so I have probes in that. I have probes in a couple of pieces of meat to give me the internal temperature of that. And I used to smoke it for 18 hours, and wait for it to get to the magic temperature, which I've always understood to be about 210, something like that. All of that said, now what I do is smoke it for 4 hours and then take it off, put it in a vacuum seal bag, and then throw it in a sous vide for another 18 hours. And we cook it in water, basically a water bath, at 165. And I've tried it both ways, where I've cooked it in the sous vide first and then stuck it in the smoker, or put it in the smoker for 4 hours and then stuck it in the sous vide. Because some people say, oh, the meat won't take the smoke after, you need to smoke it early if you want the meat to take the smoke. It doesn't matter. It takes the smoke whether you do it after the sous vide or before the sous vide. The taste is slightly different. There's a little smokier flavor, I believe, when you do it after sous videing it for 18 hours.
Because the meat's more tender, so it probably soaks it in a little bit better too.
Maybe. But it's better that, like, your meat is, neither one was dry, but it's less dry when you sous vide it after, because you don't lose that moisture with the 4 hour smoke at the end. So either way, it's just like to create, to manufacture that much food. We've got the computer of an Arduino with a Raspberry Pi running the Stoker system, whatever's inside of the sous vide thing, maintaining the temperature there. So yeah, there's a lot of technology involved in cooking, apparently. So.
You should open source this. Put it up, make a GitHub repo of everything.
Well, there is for the open source the knowledge. Yeah, yes, I guess. You think anybody's interested in that? I don't know.
Well, I do know that we probably lost all of our 2 vegetarian listeners. Or
they're gone. They're gone. They're gone. You can do the same thing with carrots. That's what's interesting. You can do the same thing with carrots. You just sous vide them for 18 hours and then put them on the smoker.
Have you ever smoked I love grilled vegetables. Have you ever?
This is going to bring back this. I think this is going to bring back all of our vegetarian listeners.
Yes,
let me tell you, this is going to be the best thing. We need to provide
equal time.
That's right. That's the fairness doctrine. Yeah, that was a good thing. This is gonna, if you've not done this before, I don't actually think I've seen this recipe anywhere. So this may be just me. So I'm sharing something that is gonna blow your mind, I think. Take a can of chickpeas.
Okay.
Reserve the water. How did this become a cooking show? Also, I'm sorry. This is probably my fault.
This is the way that this goes. I like it.
Probably my fault. Open a can of chickpeas. Reserve the liquid because you're gonna need it. And then take the chickpeas. You can do it in the can. You can put it in like a tinfoil thing that you make yourself, whatever. Just make sure it's a little open so the smoke can get in. Smoke that thing for a couple hours. You'll see the chickpeas lose the moisture and start turning, smoky. Yeah. Then take the chickpeas and make hummus with them, which is going to mean you're going to have to take that liquid you reserved. Yeah. Normally, you wouldn't have to use that liquid because the chickpeas have enough liquid in them. But you're going to have to add a little bit of it back in to get the texture of the hummus that you want. So you've made smoked hummus, only you've not smoked the hummus after you've made it. You've made it with smoked chickpeas. You take a bite of that, I'm telling you, it tastes like you're eating Gouda. It's like hummus that tastes like Gouda. It is life-changing. It is that good. And I don't know anybody, I've not seen this recipe anywhere. We just on a whim tried it years ago. I was like, what if I smoke those, hon? And I smoked the chickpeas first, and it was just, we're eating it. We're like, why does this taste like smoked Gouda? It is the best tasting hummus I've ever made.
Well, since, I talked about YouTube and how, one of the big rages on YouTube is doing cooking demos of just these amateur cooks doing cooking demos. So Tim, I think this is something that you need to document it. I think you should video record. So I think actually I saw you do something like that on Twitter. Didn't you do that I don't know, with smoking or something. I know you post pictures of what you do.
Yeah, no, I was doing some sausage, I think, from...
There was some video that you did. I can't remember. I don't remember what it was about, but it was like, but yeah, you should do a nicely prepared video kind of walking through this process and showing the smoked...
There's nothing else. That's it. You just stick it on a smoker, smoke it for a couple hours, and then make hummus out of it.
It'll be a short video then, but it'll be a
short video. Yeah. But you should try that. Not you, but you. Anybody. If you're watching, try it and respond or something with how well you loved it, because you will love it, because it is amazing. So one thing, that's been my week.
Before we run out of time, though, I thought it would be kind of interesting to talk about. So our Dev Friday release schedule.
You mean the fact that I am always consistently late anymore?
Well, I was thinking about this. We're like, I'm kind of fine with it. I think maybe we should just be clear, maybe either on the website or we do it. As I think, since our Friday is in the name, we should probably have a Friday release. On Friday. Yes, we should probably have a Friday release. So I mentioned how I think, I'm a big podcast listener, I think, and you're starting to get back in the podcast too, right? You said that you're not.
I should. I want to. But no.
So driving around, I usually have my earbuds in or walking the dog. I'm usually always listening to a podcast. And I think that the time of when podcasts are released, it becomes important because I usually think about that when I'm kind of looking at the shows and just having a general idea. And I think that becomes a good way to build an audience if the more consistent it is. So I'm totally fine if we're like say we're recording this episode and then a week later, then we'll push it then on that Friday. But then I thought about it gets to be a little bit tricky then when we just did our Christmas Eve and a New Year's Eve. We're kind of talking about those things. And let's say people are listening to our Christmas Eve episode maybe a week later, which maybe it's not that bad either.
Is it though? Because it's like they're experiencing it when it happened after the fact.
Yeah, so I totally think that's fine. But I think we should keep it on totally fine if it's a week after the fact. But let's push it out on a Friday because that's sometimes when I push my website updates too. When I need to do any big changes, I have time to do this on a Friday too. So, but I think that could be a good strategy kind of going forward. What do you think about that?
So live on Friday and then released it Friday afterwards because of all of the effort of the post-production that we do.
Unless you could figure out a way, and I know you don't have time for this right now, but is there an automatic way you could basically just take the two files, like you have my file, your file, and basically run it through some scripts, automatically push it up to S3 at the end, just automate it, right? Is there a way you could do that? Like attach the two, like the opening and closing, like audio clips and just kind of, because you don't do any editing in the middle. Maybe adjust the levels or, maybe run a filter on it through. But is there some way you could basically just script it? So you just pop these two files someplace, run one command, and then just does it?
I don't know. I kind of think there should be. Now I'm using Cakewalk to do the processing. So I drop the tracks in, trim them up, sync them to the bumper music. So we know when we start. And then that has gates.
So Cakewalk is an audio editor? Because I've heard of that.
It's I think it would fall in the category of a DAW, a digital audio workstation. Okay. So that's like what are the other ones? I can't even now I can't remember.
Yeah, I've never used those before.
Like Pro Tools.
Okay.
Pro Tools would be
okay. Yeah.
So and they went out of business and then something else bought them and made it free. But I've used it since I was a kid doing
Cakewalk by Lego. Oh, okay, gotcha. BandLab.
Yep. Yep. So I've used Cakewalk products since I was much younger, doing sequencing and stuff like that. But yeah, I wish probably if I was using something like Ardor, which is a open source workstation, same concept, audio editor. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if that would have ways to script these things. But then the one thing that I know computers can do, I just don't know software that makes it easy to do out of the box, is say, in the background of this track, which is the track that we pull down from the live stream, which is all the audio signals mixed together, right? Mm-hmm. We get that, and in that track, you can align it with the bumper music.
Yeah.
Because we play the same, we basically have, an hour audio file that has the bumper music at the start and the beginning, start and the end, right? So that's also in Cakewalk, in the same positions. So we can just say, grab the audio from the stream, listen to it, sync it so the bumper music starts at the same time. And then once the bumper music starts at the same time, ignore the bumper music and then take Mark's track and Tim's track and sync them so they match their audio. So that's how we get everything synchronized together. So we have a bumper that's not played like it is now. It's just automatic, and then my voice, your voice, and it actually does some side channel stuff, so it drops the bumper as we talk and all that kind of fun stuff. If we could figure out how to get that audio synced together correctly to know where it falls, and I know that's possible, I just don't know what tooling lets you do that. And if there is a way to say, that's a nice project there, I need to take this clip and replace this clip with this new clip and shift it to this time based off of what I discovered from synchronizing the audio, then really that's the only human component that I have. Then I go in and I actually have the exports already set. They're like template exports. So I just hit like, yep, export the, because there's a mix that is then you and me, just our track, since it's been shifted and corrected for time. It's just your track and just my track, which we mix together and we send that off for transcription. And then there's the full mix that has the bumper in it as well and doesn't have you and me panned directly left and right. It has us panned more towards the middle, but a little bit to the side, so you can hear a little bit of difference with who's talking. And we export those really 3 files: a mix, your track and my track, that then get mixed together to a stereo file, so the transcription has it. So yes, totally parts of that could be automated. I just don't know what software allows you to automate that type of workflow easily.
Have you taken a look? Because it's been a while and I don't know much about it, but because I took in first one project, I was taking a look at Amazon's API for their web service API for doing sound processing. Have you taken a look at anything like that to see? Because I know you can do some audio processing, like especially if you want to do conversions. So if you want to have you have this one audio file or video file and then convert to something else, you could run it through their workflow. So basically create like one of their cloud workflows and be able to do something. So I'm wondering if you do something where if you have multiple files, you basically want to merge them together, do a little bit of processing, because basically what you're talking about is basically what, 4 files. So my file, your file, and then the opening, closing, merging.
But the processing too, though, the processing too is a thing. Like we put a gate on it and all that, which I'm sure they can do.
Yeah.
But it's a gate that we can kind of control in Cakewalk and say, oh, this is how strong we want this gate to be. And now that it's set, I don't mess with it.
Yeah.
But no, I really, for that, I feel like it would be something like an Ardour or some other audio software that allowed better scripting of it. And the one thing I just can't solve is syncing the audio. I know it can be done.
Like, when you say syncing the audio, because that's something that we talked about before. So because I'm recording my audio on the side through Audacity, you're recording on your side, but then there's still a little bit of we're losing something.
Well, we don't know. Yeah, like we don't know. Like we don't go, oh, hit start all at the same time. And this is why the movie industry they have that clapper thing, right? That they snap it and it makes that sound. That's so there's a visual.
Yeah.
Okay, this thing is closing at one point. There's also the audio that we hear that click, and that tells us if I'm looking, I see a spike in my waveform. Oh, that's when that happened, and I can sync that visually with me seeing in all of the camera angles it closing. If I go to the frame where I can see, oh, it's fully closed, and I grab the audio and I say, this is where we see this big line going, across that says, wow, that was a loud noise, and I sync all that up. Now all the tracks are in sync. It's basically that same thing. We just leveraged the bumper music for that.
Yeah. So that would be an
little
interesting
bit more
problem.
Confusing because you and me, our tracks don't have any bumper music.
That's gonna be a hard problem to solve. Yeah.
Well, it shouldn't be. I know it's possible. I know a computer can. I mean, you can ask your phone, "What am I listening to?" It's going to figure that out, right? So being able to identify where the same audio is playing, because that's what we would need to do. We need to say, here's the mix down from the stream that has everybody's track in it. Identify where the bumper starts. Oh, it starts right here at this point in time. That's cool. Now, using that as a relative time, sync up Tim's audio and sync up Mark's audio, which should also be easy because, I mean, they have a whole file of us talking to be like, oh, where does it slide in and fit? So it shouldn't be hard for a computer to figure all that out. I just don't know how you would set that up, So
I know. Well, if we can eventually see, if we're going to be doing like 100 episodes of the show, I think eventually we should probably get this automated.
Yeah,
because we are developers, Tim. That's what developers do. They want to automate stuff so we don't have to do as much work.
Well, everybody knows developers are inherently lazy. That's the whole reason why we use computers. We don't want to do this work ourselves. But Yeah, 100 episodes. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. Hey, we're at 13 now.
Here's a question.
Who would have thought we would get to 13?
Not many people. In fact, I wonder which will happen first. Will we get 100 episodes first, or will we get 100 listeners?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a really good question.
That'd be a really long tail.
All right. Well, who knows if there's going to be an episode 14? You might if you listen next week, 1:00 p.m. Eastern, Fridays, or go to devfridayshow.com. Right, Mark?
That's right. And eventually we'll get I don't know, maybe we'll do like a live stream feature, build that into the website. I know the next thing I'm working on is the custom audio player, so we get the chapter selection working, but yeah.
All right. Well, we will see you next, maybe.